Hello, my name is Bruce Miller, and I'm with RimTech Consulting. And the purpose of today's webinar session is to explore why the heck is Microsoft Purview so difficult anyway? And it is kind of tricky to understand it. So hopefully we can help with that in this session today. So let's start with this. Compliance. This is what it's all about after all. So keep this in mind. If you imagine Purview as a bowling ball, it's big, heavy, and hollow. Then it covers a lot of ground with compliance, much more than record keeping. So think of the record keeping as a golf ball rattling around inside the bowling ball. It's a subset of the overall compliance. So my definition of compliance for Purview is this, which is record keeping compliance, not any of the other features or aspects of Purview. So to me, record keeping compliance means that every document or email in SharePoint adheres to or complies with the rules in the official retention schedule. And those rules have to be the correct ones. Number two is all the documents in SharePoint are being managed as a record. Notice what I never said. I never said they are a record. I said they're being managed as a record. Very important distinction. And that in turn means three things. Number one, it's immutable. Neither the content nor the metadata can be modified throughout its life cycle. Number two is it is assigned a retention rule. Every single document is assigned a retention rule, i.e. classified against the retention schedule. And finally is that all of your event-based records, those are the records that are what we call case records that have event-based triggers, all of those are being managed properly, which means you have and recorded the necessary event trigger dates for all of them, and they're being properly applied. So the third aspect of compliance is disposition, and that's where it all comes together. Can you do a disposition? A disposition means 3, 4, 5 years out, you're going to press one button and blow away millions and millions and millions of records. And in order to do that, you had better be fully confident that you're doing it correctly and appropriately. And it's my opinion that almost every EDRMS system on the planet today cannot do a disposition because you don't have that level of confidence. So a properly deployed EDRMS with Purview or without Purview must have a guarantee of at least 85% classification accuracy. Now I have a video out there of how to measure and prove that. Okay, so let's get one thing straight right away, which is Purview is simple to deploy. Absolutely it is. Any of you who give me a half a day or so, and I will deploy Purview for you. It's that simple. Step one, enter your retention schedule. Take each retention rule out of your retention schedule, use the wizard, put it into Purview. Step two, you're done. In SharePoint, anytime a user puts a document into SharePoint, there's a button on screen that says Apply Label, and they can pick any label they want and put it on the document. You're done. Half a day, Purview is fully deployed. Simple, but you'll never be compliant. There is no way that's going to be compliant. So I need to take a few minutes to explain why that is. So we need a whole new approach towards records management now because it's digital. The average number of records per person per day is typically 12. So if you have 1,000 users, that means you have 12,000 records every single day flowing into your system. And that's a daily flow. It's not a fixed set of records, it's a daily flow. And I'll prove in a moment, I hope so anyway, that you can't depend on users to declare and classify them. So where does that leave us? It means that we're going to have to automate this process. Okay? There, at 12,000 a day, there's no hope, no opportunity for the records manager to intervene or have anything to do with these records whatsoever. And if we can't rely on the users to do it properly, then that means we have to automate the whole thing. And that is the way that any modern EDRMS is being deployed these days. Automation is the only way to go, which I hopefully will prove to you in a moment. So I have 8 characteristics or reasons why Purview is so difficult. And here they are right here. I won't repeat them now because we're going to cover each one of them. But to me, the three secrets to successfully deploying it are knowing what to avoid, when to use a workaround, and when to use custom programming. Now, is Purview easy to deploy? Yes, but it'll never be compliant. What's difficult about Purview is to get it right, to deploy it correctly so that not only are you compliant, but you can mathematically prove it. It's not a subjective thing, right? You have to be able to prove in court if necessary that your system is compliant. And that means deploying it right. And that's what's very, very, very tricky with Purview. So we're going to cover each of these 8 items here. So before we get into it in detail, some basic math here. 1,000 users, typically they create 12 digital records a day. That's typically 50 inbound emails, 20% of which are records, which means 10 emails, and 2 non-emails a day. Those are documents they create or download. So total of 12. That's 12,000 a day if you had 1,000 users, 60,000 a week, 2.7 million in a year. So if you assume that the records manager, that'd be you, needs at least a minute each to do anything with that record, look at it, examine it, fix it, classify it, forget it. You're going to need 25 person days, that's 25 8-hour days, just to deal with the first day's worth of records. So this is a no-go. There's no way that you can deal with this. And here's another cold hard reality. Take a document and give it to 10 different users at random and ask them 2 questions. 1, is this a record? And 2, where does it belong in the retention schedule? You're going to get up to 10 different answers. That's a problem. And if you do it again a month or 2 later, same document, same users, guess what? You're going to get up to 10 different answers from the ones they gave a month ago. So what is the point? The point is we cannot rely on users to tell us what is a record or how they're classified against the retention schedule. I have never seen it in my career, and I don't think I ever will see it. So that leads to 2 possible schools of thought. One is compliance comes from end users. That's the way the world has tried to work for the last number of years. It's up to the users to tell us what are records, and it's up to them to classify it against the retention schedule. That's one school of thought. And there's a lot of corporate policies that are written that way. The other school of thought says this: you must be out of your mind, to put it lightly. You really expect our users to do this? Do you think we can hit our 85% classification accuracy level? Not going to happen. Never going to happen. So therefore, we need to impose it on the users. Which of these 2 schools of thought is right? The answer is the school of thought where we impose it. Expecting the users to do this has never worked in my entire career. I've never seen it. And again, I don't think I ever will, for a bunch of reasons, but in my experience, it'll never work. So the problem with Purview is that that's the way it's designed to work. If you take Purview right out of the box and do what it says to do, that's where you're going to end up, in that school of thought. We're going to count on the users who can now pick any retention rule they want. That's danger number 1. They can change their mind as often as they want. That's danger number 2. And you can impose something on them, but they can override it. That's danger number 3. And danger number 4 is they won't care and they'll just pick whatever is convenient to them. Okay? Danger number 5. So there's no way this is going to work. So therefore, my conclusion is out of the box, that's not the way you're ever going to be compliant. So this is your worst nightmare right here. This is a screen capture of SharePoint. This is the document metadata data entry panel on the right, where they fill out the metadata. And if you do it out of the box, then you're going to have this button here, apply label. You don't ever want to see that button. If you do, then in my opinion, you've lost your project right then and right there. because this is never going to get you the accuracy that you need. We have to get rid of that button. So this is something you have to avoid in Purview. Don't wake up that button. And I have a video, several videos that mention how to avoid waking up that video. So first thing that makes it difficult is the posture is upside down. You have to write it up. Number two is it has a whole new language. And that language is far from what we're used to in the records business. Look at the list on the left. Those are some pretty unusual terms, but they all are relevant to records keeping. So I've put on the right what I think is more or less the equivalent of what's on the left. Some of these are rather technical. You'll notice I highlighted one of them in red. That's refinable string. This is my litmus test. If I'm talking to an IT or records person and they claim to understand how to deal with records management and Purview, I always tell them, tell me what a refinable string is and how it impacts your records. And I have yet to find someone who could answer that question. But if you don't know the answer, you do not know how to use Purview to do records management. You simply do not. You need to know the difference between a managed property and a crawl property. You need to know when preservation copies are going to be made and how to avoid that and what's so bad about preservation copies, right? You need to know that there are two versioning streams. There's document versions and records versions, and they're independent of each other. And yeah, they're all records that have to be managed. So the language was invented by Microsoft, and it's completely different than anything you've ever seen before. So that makes the learning curve much, much trickier. And as I said before, Purview is very technical. How technical? Well, this is what I recommend to any records manager. Don't go into Purview alone. If you don't have an IT person with you by your side, it's not going to go well. It's not going to go well at all because you'll run into stuff that's so technical, you're going to need help. And that has borne itself out in all of our clients, that's for sure. How technical is it? Well, here's a sample. In order to automate record keeping with Purview, you have to use something called the substrate. And the substrate is a layer. Now, there's another records terminology. I should have had it on my list there. You've got to go down to the substrate. I call it the basement of Microsoft 365. And it takes 6 steps to get down to the basement. But when you're there, you're dealing with a whole new world of crawled properties and managed properties. And in that world, it's really meant for programmers, not for end users. And here's a fun fact. Purview is never seen by users. Don't forget that. SharePoint does not manage records, and it never will. Purview manages records, but it's not for users. It's only for you. So when you're in the basement, in the substrate, you've got to figure out crawled properties versus managed properties. In short, a crawled property is searchable inside one of Microsoft's products, such as OneDrive, Exchange, or SharePoint. Those are crawled properties. A managed property is a different type of property, which is an amalgam of all the crawled properties mixed together with a blender so that you can search any of the Microsoft products. So you have to understand that to use it in order to automate Purview's record keeping. And it's going to introduce something called a refinable string. Now, the diagram I just showed you was from Microsoft. This is one I made, which I find a little easier to understand. You have crawl properties, we have search schema mappings, and then we have managed properties, and then we have refinable strings. Now look at the language I just spoke. That's as far from records keeping as you'll ever get, but you had to deal with it. So crawl properties in yellow are things you can search for in each product. What Microsoft does is they take all of these products with similar meanings and they put them in a blender, press puree, and you end up with these managed properties. The managed properties are what you search when you're doing a Microsoft 365 search, not a SharePoint search, not a OneDrive search, not an Exchange search, but a Purview search. So because Purview has the search all of Microsoft's products. So the green managed properties are what you search. And that's a skill you have to learn. And there's a problem though. In order to automate record keeping properly, underline the word properly, with Purview, you have to use auto apply policies, whatever the heck they are. And they cannot use a search of the yellow or the green, neither the crawl properties nor the managed ones. They can only use refinable strings. So you have to learn what refinable strings are. Now here's an example of 1, 2, 3, 4 activities from the retention schedule and 2 content rules in each. What's a content rule? A content rule is a rule that says for this content in SharePoint, please apply this retention rule to that content. That's how any EDRMS system works, including Purview and other competitive products. They all basically work the same. You have to build these content rules. And the content rules, how do they say which content? It's condition. If the condition's met, that's the content I want you to apply this retention rule to. For example, if the metadata field publish equals yes, keep it for 25 years. If it's equal to no, keep it for 5 years. So when you use Purview to write these content rules, you have to use a refinable string. And as you can see here in these examples, for 4 libraries, I chewed up 4 refinable strings. But here's the problem. There's only 99 available. So if I have a retention schedule with 800 categories, which is normal and healthy, I'm way, way short. So you have to find a way to overcome that. So that's an example of how technical it is. Now here's another example. When you're writing those content rules, which are the beating heart of any EDRMS, especially Purview, then you have to write the rules in a language called KeyQL. It's not really a language, it's more of a syntax, but it's for all intents and purposes, it's a language. So you have to learn this programming language. It's very simplistic, but I put together a 40-page manual on how to use it because I couldn't find one online anywhere. So if any of you would like a copy, feel free to reach out and I'll email you a copy of this KeyQL reference guide. Okay, there's a copy of it's 45 pages long, roughly. But my point is this is why you need someone with IT with you, because you have to master this language. If you cannot learn and master KeyQL, then you cannot possibly deploy Purview properly, because the only way to deploy it properly is with automation. The only way to do automation is with content rules. The manner in which Purview does content rules is auto-apply policies. The only way to write auto-apply policies is with KeyQL. A lot to say, but that's the way it is. I took 2 tables out of that document just to give you a hint of how it works. It's inherently very simple in that it's just a property value pairs. Right here we have, well, it's a very unusual example. Let me give you a simpler example here. Yeah, if the content type is document, this is in SharePoint. These are some email properties. These are some SharePoint properties. But over here, if content type equals document, then you can apply a specified retention rule to that content. So that's what you have to master to really get Purview working properly. Okay, pretty technical stuff. Now, number 4, case records. This is the Achilles heel of Purview. In my opinion, and again, this is an opinion, not a, well, I think it's a fact. My opinion is that Purview does a terrible job of case records. So bad that it's not really viable to use it out of the box. It's just not. It's too gnarly, too complex. I'm not even convinced it would work. And worse is that you chew through refinable strings and you run out real quick. So I have a whole dedicated video on how to deal with that. It's not a pretty sight, not at all. So what are the heck are case records? Well, it's 60 or more % of all your records are case records. And case records are records that are a member of a case business activity. And a case business activity is one that consists of a series of repeated adventures that come to an end. For example, auditing. One word, auditing. That describes the business activity of audits, right? But every audit is an adventure that generates records unique to that audit. So if you do a health and safety audit in March, and then you do a accounting or financial statement uh, audit in November, they're two totally different adventures. Each one has a different set of records that need to be separated from the other adventure, and you have to track and record the end date of each one because the trigger date is likely to be adventure end date or case end date plus X years then destroy. Now, this has a profound effect on how you deploy SharePoint. I have at least one or two videos, excuse me, YouTube videos on this. And I have a dedicated YouTube video just on case records, two of them, as a matter of fact. So case records are tricky with Purview, extremely tricky. If you think of contracts, employees, and projects, and if you had 1,000 contracts, 1,000 employees, and let's say 1,000 projects, then that means you have to track 3,000 end dates, and you have to have 3,000 sets of records separate from each other in SharePoint, and you have to get the retention rule properly applied. Can Purview do it? Yes, it can. Should you do it the way Microsoft wants you to? No, you must not, because it'll never work. You have to get out your technical programming guide and program things to make it work properly. At least that's the only way we could figure it out. Now, the opposite are much more straightforward. The opposite of case records are the 40% that remains are administrative records that have no end date. It's triggered by the age. So the retention rule is age compared to the retention rule or retention period, and then the disposition action at the end of its life. So you have to properly deploy these two. So this is what makes cases so tricky in SharePoint, or sorry, in Purview. Purview wants you to record the end dates of all of these adventures in Purview. So the end dates are separated from the records. The records live in SharePoint, but the end dates are over in Purview. And you've got to somehow tie them together. And they do, and it does work. But boy, oh boy, the level of complexity is mind-boggling. And again, if you're using automation, which is the only correct way to do it, you're going to run out of refinable strings. So in short, you have to have, if you have three categories in your retention schedule, contracts, projects, and employees, you're going to need to define event types for contracts, event types for project completion, and so on. And then you have cases, which is a collection of records related to one adventure, and then an end date for each one. So in this example, you would have 3,000 end dates, okay? And making all that work in Purview is extremely complex and difficult. So much so that we don't do it. We don't. We programmatically make it work. So for case records, you're in this new world of custom programming. That's the way we do it. And there are 5 elements of managing case records that you have to use. We use all 5. Oh, sorry, we don't use number 5, but we use the first 4. And we do it all programmatically. What we found about Purview is that there were 2 ways to use it. Either the GUI, the graphical user interface, or programmatically, write programs to do it. When it comes to case records, we don't think there's any other way to do it other than custom programming. That's the only way we could find to make it work and not run into any of the limitations. Okay, so now the next reason that Purview is difficult is rules competition. So what exactly does that mean? Well, it means that there are 2 manners of applying retention rules in quote. One is retention policies, and the other are retention labels. What is an example of a retention policy? Keep 5 years and destroy. What's an example of a retention label? Keep 5 years and destroy. Yeah, they're both identical. But The first one is applied to places. The second one is applied to things. And if you use both, you're going to get in trouble. Here's how you get in trouble. They compete with each other quite a bit. For example, if I have a site, subsites, and a library, and if this is me right here, this document, and somebody assigns a retention policy called keep for 5 years and destroy, well, everything in that location has the same rule. So now I live here in library one. I'm going to be kept for 5 years. Someone else comes along and puts a 10-year rule in subsite one. Now I have two policies. So now I have two retention rules and they compete with each other. Which one wins? Now I come along and my corporate records manager applies a label automatically to this document. Now I have three retention rules. Which one wins? Now, everything is good, but now the user comes along and says, 25 years? I don't want that. I want 2 years. So I'm going to put my own label on this at 2 years. I don't care what the records manager thinks. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 retention rules on me, all at the same time, all competing with each other. Which one wins? The Purview decides it, not you. And Purview decides it's the 2-year label because I put it on myself. You see why you never want users putting labels on? So the only way to avoid this competition is don't use retention policies. They are a very bad idea. There is a use case for them, but not normally, okay? Only for wild exceptions. And I have a full YouTube video over here on retention policies and why they're a really bad idea. Next up is you can undo records. What the heck does that mean? Well, remember the principle of immutability? It says when we decide we're going to manage this as a record, you cannot delete it or edit it, either the metadata or the content. Well, in Purview, you can say, nah, I don't like that. I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to break the lock with a set of bolt cutters, and I'm going to do anything I want with that document. You can do that with Purview. Don't. It is a complexity nightmare. And again, I have a YouTube video on that. These screen captures just show here is a record that has been unlocked, a scenario you never want to see. Look, the record status is unlocked. And what that does is it triggers a secondary version stream. Now you've got the primary version stream in SharePoint, and you have a secondary version stream in the cloud, which is another set of versions of the same document. Okay, very, very complicated. And here's the worst part of it: there's no mechanism to relock it. So users can unlock and leave everything unlocked, and no more records management is going on. Don't do that. Thankfully, and it was actually at my insistence, Microsoft said, okay, we'll give you a configurations switch setting where you can turn that ability off. So enable record versioning, which is Purview's language for allow people to undo a record. You can turn it off. And we insist that every one of our clients turn it off. Please don't turn that thing on. Now, strong statement. The disposition is the end game. This is where records comes together and we do what we were all set out to do, which is let's delete 95% of all the records in accordance with the retention schedule. It's badly broken. Do not use it out of the box as it is delivered. This is how it's supposed to work. The step one, the Purview says, here's a list of, I don't know, 2 million documents ready to go. Step two is the records manager says, oh, I'm going to share that list with my business owners and give them a chance to give me their opinion on whether they agree or don't agree. And then we can have a debate and I will decide the end game, the end result. And step three is once I've got that out of the way, I will go ahead and pull the switch and delete the 2 million. The records manager must be in full control at all times. Must. Why? Because they have to go to court and defend this. right? And in order to do it, it has to be fully accountable, fully audited, and legally defensible. So this is how the process is supposed to work. How does it work in Purview? Step one, qualify. No such step. Instead, every single time, let's say it's Monday at 9:38 a.m., 100 documents meet their end of life uh, period. So each of the, let's say that those 100 records come from 50 different users, two each. So Purview sends an email out to all 50 people at 9:39 and says, take a look. This thing is ready to go. Do you agree? If you do, I'm going to blow it away right here, right now. I mean, that completely breaks the rules. And it also allows you to say, I don't like the retention. I don't, no, can we change the label? Yeah, we're going to change the retention label, which means we just undid everything we did. Or keep the label, but break it. It's a 10-year label. Keep it for another 12 years or another 50 years. Can you imagine that happening every single day to millions and millions of records over time? The records manager has no control, no control. And why did we go through all the trouble of setting all those rules in the first place? We're undoing them now. So the problem here is Purview's posture. It believes, and it's built this way, that users are in full control of records at all times. They're not. We need to impose records on the users. So what we do is we have a workaround to completely avoid that process and make it right. And the last point, number 8, is labels. Now, labels are good. There's nothing wrong with labels. But you know what? They're virtually indelible. What do I mean by that? When you think of them as Velcro or sticky notes, when you stick these labels on, good luck getting them off. There are 4 things you're going to have to do at some point to some labels. Removing it, changing it, swapping a label with another one. Eventually, you're going to have to do that because you're human. You're going to make mistakes. And remember, Purview applies labels automatically every single day, assuming you deployed Purview properly, right? Because we don't want you having users applying labels. So if you do it that way, then labels are being applied by the millions, okay? If you are just 1,000 users, you're getting almost 3 million records a year. Wait 5 years, you got 15 million. Doesn't take long, right? So what can you do with a label once it's stuck on a document? Well, it has 4 dependencies. Number 1 is, was it published or not published? That has huge meaning in Purview. Published is a method of applying a label or making a label available to a product. And it's something that we forbid. We say, don't ever do that, because if you do, you wake up that button in SharePoint that allows users to pick retention rules. Number 2 is, was it auto-applied or was it not auto-applied? Okay. And then who applied it? Was it applied by a user or was it auto-applied? And then what's in the label? Is it a time-based or an event-based label? You have to answer all of those 4 questions because each scenario means that the answer to the question, what can I do with this label, will vary. So it's quite a tangled affair. I'll give you some examples. There's 2 ways to apply a label with Purview. One is create your auto-apply policy using the graphical user interface, okay? That's the way you're supposed to do it. The other way is to forget the user interface and use custom programming. That's what we do. That's the only way we apply labels, okay? The only way. And if which method you used will again determine what you can do with a label once it's been applied. For example, delete a label. Well, if the label has yet to be applied to a single document, it's easy, just delete it because it hasn't been used. But once it's been applied and you want to delete it, then it varies depending on whether it's a time-based label or an event-based label. If it's time-based, you can use the graphical user interface, but only if you haven't used it inside a policy. And if it is an event-based label, you cannot delete it at all, programmatically or with a GUI. You made a mistake. You put a label out there, and it took you a month before you realized your mistake. In that month, it was assigned to 500,000 documents. Uh-oh. You meant to say 15 years, but you typed in 5 years. So how do you fix that mistake? Well, it depends on a whole bunch of things. Number one is, has it been applied? Yes, it has. So it's been applied to one or more items. Now, you can change the name of the label, the description, but not the 5 to 15. You cannot change the number, which is the part that counts. Okay? If it has not yet been applied to any items, which means it's just sitting in a pile of labels, you haven't done anything with them, then you can change anything you want. But boy, oh boy, oh boy, it is so tricky to change once it's been applied. For example, if it was published, which is the wrong way to assign labels, then you can remove it via the user interface, but only one at a time. So this label was applied to 50,000 documents. Okay, and you used publish to do it, which you shouldn't have done. But nonetheless, you did it. So now, how do you remove the 50,000? Well, you sit in front of your computer and you do the 8-step wizard 50,000 times. Good luck with that. There's no bulk remove, right? But if you didn't publish it, then you can remove it via a custom programming line of code, which is simple, only takes a few minutes. You can delete all 50,000 in 5 minutes by just writing a line of code that sounds like this. If library equals audits and retention label equals 5 years, then replace it with one that says 5, or just, sorry, remove that label, right? You're going to have to reapply the fixed one later. So with programming, you can do single or bulk. So it's hugely important to know that, uh, for example, over here, remove, or what happens after you've removed the bad label? Well, now you got to apply the new one, right? So if it's published, you have to apply it via the GUI. But if it's not been published, the only way to do it is to apply a new one via programming. I know this is rather confusing, but that's the point. That's my point, is that how you do things and what the label contains drastically influences what you can do with these labels. So please, before you start slapping labels on things left and right, think about the consequences. What will you be able to do with those labels? How hard or difficult will they be to maintain over the lifetime? So that's it. That's the 8 steps, or the 8 factors. Now, these are my 5 secrets to properly deploy Purview. Number 1, reverse the posture. Impose compliance. Never, ever make this mistake. Don't publish a label. If you do, the apply label button is awakens and is on the screen. You cannot reverse that. So don't ever do that. Number 2 is avoid retention policies because they conflict with your retention labels. Disable record versioning. You don't need it. It's uncalled for. It should be never done. There's 7 ways to apply labels in Purview. The only right way is auto apply. And finally, for case records, you're going to have to do programming in order to do it properly and safely without running into extreme limits like the refinable strings. So that's how we do it. We do it with programming, and we use, I think, 4 refinable strings. That's it. You can have thousands, tens of thousands of users, millions and millions of records, and it only uses 5 refinable strings. So off we go, no problem. But again, it's programmatically. We found that of all the things we want to do with Purview, if we do these things programmatically, everything runs so smoothly. It's wonderful. But to use the graphical user interface out of the box, too limiting. We don't even think it's possible to do case records with it. So we really never really use the GUI anymore. We really don't. We have Purview running very, very well, but not by using the user interface. So that's it. I just wanted to remind you that we offer training, consulting, and accelerators. These two accelerators, one is you can get a retention schedule ready for this kind of product really quickly. If you're a municipality, almost instantly. And secondly is we have Purview accelerators that allow you to deploy Purview really, really fast, really, really cheaply, and without any mistakes and guarantee your compliance. So I definitely encourage you to check our YouTube channel and look for these kinds of things. And if you'd like, anyone who attends any of our webinars or training, I'm happy to set up a call with you at any time to introduce you to this and answer any questions you might have. That is it. Thank you very much for attending. I really appreciate it. Turns out it was a Canadian holiday today. So I didn't know that when I scheduled it, but I'm going to put this on our YouTube channel. So you can download it anytime after today, actually. So if you have any questions, speak up or put them in the chat. No, very good. Okay. Well, again, thank you very much for attending. I truly appreciate it, especially on a holiday. Oh, there is a question. What happens if the apply label button is activated? What that means is that now every time someone puts a document in SharePoint, they can apply any label of their choice. It further means that if they don't like the label that someone else put on it, they can replace it with a label of their choosing. So the label can bounce around. You can have one label on a Monday, different label on a Wednesday. 6 months later, someone can put a different label on it. That's not records compliance. Number two, if the records manager comes along and says, excuse me, I'm going to put the official correct label on it, and they do, then the user can override it at any time. That's not compliance either. That's undoing compliance, right? Compliance says, this is our retention schedule. This is the retention rule for that document. And if you don't like it, tough. We can have a conversation, but we're not going to change our rules, right? Unless we agree, and then we change the whole system. But the button, once it's awakened, and it's awakened by when the first time you publish a label. Once that button is awakened, it's awakened on Exchange, OneDrive, and SharePoint. You cannot reverse it. You cannot undo it and say, oops, I didn't really mean to do that. If you pick up the phone and call Microsoft like I've done and say, made a stupid mistake. Can you remove that, please? No, can't be done. Okay. So now the horse is out of the barn. All your users can now do any retention they want for any reason at any time, depending on their mood, whether their dog ate the homework, whether they're having a bad hair day, and there's nothing you can do about it. And if you think that you're going to, ignore the users and you'll be a super user, put on your hero's cape and all put the right label on it every single day. No, you won't, because it'll take you 24 hours, assuming 60 seconds per document, to do one single day's worth of flow at 12,000. So this is what I like to tell records people. There are two things that are going to change in your life. Number one is you will never, ever touch records again. Not going to happen. Can't. Number two is your retention schedule is got to be rewritten such that no one will ever see it or use it. Those are two realities. So the answer to that question that just popped up is no. There is no workaround to disable that button. I had a very long conversation with Microsoft about it, and they were trying hard. They said, well, we can make it not work. So I said, well, what does that mean? And they said, well, the user can still use the button, they can pick the label, and it will show as applied to the document, but it won't actually be on the document. So I uh, I said, that sounds more like a hack than a fix to me. Anyway, that's the best they could offer. So uh, someday, I'm confident. I mean, they're not stupid. Someday, Microsoft is going to change that feature. I have no doubt they're going to have to. Um, but for now, for the foreseeable future, there's no way around that. So I encourage you, I have a number of YouTube videos about all of these topics. I definitely encourage you to take a look. And if you really want, if you're contemplating an actual deployment of Purview, then I highly encourage you to take our training. Our training is pretty affordable, and we will teach you how to actually do all this stuff. Very good. Well, if there are no more questions, we can terminate, and I will send you an email probably later today or tomorrow with the link to download the recording. So again, thank you very much. Really, really appreciate it.